Alright, hello everyone, it's silverkyle, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien as I continue my reread for The Lord of the Rings that I have not read since I was 14 years old, and I am absolutely loving revisiting this as an adult. I'm able to finally grasp what Tolkien is trying to do with the world building, the lore, the story, and the writing that I did not enjoy as a teenager, but fully appreciate now as an adult. So we will be going into some minor spoilers for The Two Towers, as I don't feel I could really give this review justice without talking about some of the characters and at least the basic plot for The Two Towers. Now, some of that will spoil at least also the basic plot of the Fellowship of the Ring, but once again, no major spoilers until the very end. When I'm done the review, I will be talking about some major spoilers so that I can just talk about some of the favorite parts of this book here. Now, The Two Towers takes place right where we left off from the Fellowship of the Ring, where some of the company are now gone, and we have the Fellowship being split into two. We have Sam and Frodo that are continuing the quest to destroy the ring, and we have Aragorn kind of rounding up the rest of the company to try to figure out if any of the other Fellowship have survived, basically from what happened at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring. And what we get then is a story split into two exactly. So we have the first half of this book dedicated to Aragorn and the rest of the Fellowship, and then we finish off with Sam and Frodo continuing on with their part. And while this flowed really well, just getting the full complete stories all in one shot from Aragorn and his company, and then Frodo and his company, I felt that it really slowed down once we got to Sam and Frodo. And when you have the rest of like half of the book dedicated to just them, I wasn't as enthralled. That's kind of what got me to stop reading Return of the King, was them. I didn't enjoy Sam and Frodo nearly as much as I enjoyed Aragorn's. And I feel that if maybe they would have split it up with a few chapters of Aragorn, then going to Sam and Frodo, then back to Aragorn, I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But that's one of the few negatives that I have of this, as everything else is great. And even with Sam and Frodo, Sam is arguably one of the best supporting characters. Everything that he does is great. And then we also have another character that is introduced in Sam and Frodo's story that really adds a lot to the dynamic of that trio. And it's arguably why Lord of the Rings is so popular and so great, with that extra character added in there, and kind of seeing the strife that it's putting between Sam and Frodo, while also strengthening their bond as friends as well. It's some great stuff. We also do get to see a little bit of friendships being created within Legolas and Gimli, who weren't really there in Fellowship of the Ring, but are taking a much bigger roles here. Aragorn also is very much taking a forefront seat here as he becomes the leader that he was always meant to be, and basically in control of the rest of this party. And one of my favorite parts was him talking to Legolas and Gimli and trying to decide what to do in the next steps, but basically leaving it up to Aragorn to choose. And it's only a few pages, but there's sometimes, every once in a while, the conversations that they have that I absolutely love within Fellowship and The Two Towers. They're just some really nice moments in conversations that before I always just wanted action, and now I just love it when they're having a long conversation about what they're going to do, or talking about maybe some of the previous history about the Middle-earth world. I really like that. In terms of talking about world building, we do get a little bit near the end in the Sam and Frodo story about another character that is introduced, and you know who I'm talking about if you've seen the movie or if you've read the book, for this other character that shows up only in the last few chapters, and there's a few pages dedicated to a little bit of that history, and I'm like, oh, this is so juicy. I love that. It's a really interesting mythical story, I guess, and I just really like that aspect. So I'm going to give The Two Towers a 4 out of 5 stars, officially 4 stars on Goodreads, but it is just a 4.0. It's not 4.5 or 3.5. It is a full 4 stars. And I didn't like this as much as Fellowship of the Ring, because I think that they started off the Fellowship with that first chapter where nothing really happens in it, but it just talks about basically Hobbit society and getting a slow burn towards that, meeting Strider in that one, meeting Gandalf, the conversation that Gandalf and Frodo have about the ring and Sauron, and talking about so much about the history of Middle-earth really bumped Fellowship up for me. Whereas Two Towers, now you're splitting off the companies, and I don't like, Frodo always had basically the other hobbits and Gandalf and then Strider and then afterwards the rest of the company afterwards in Fellowship of the Ring. So I was able to always enjoy kind of where they were going. And I really enjoyed the very beginning where it's just kind of Frodo doing his own thing, showing Hobbit society, taking his time with Gandalf. I liked all of that. And I didn't find that I enjoyed it as much in this one. So 4 out of 5 stars, but I still very much enjoy this. And I do also feel that in about 5 years from now, potentially when I want to reread The Lord of the Rings once again, I could see myself enjoying it even more. Because while I enjoy this a lot more than when I was 14, I feel like Lord of the Rings is something that you would appreciate the more that you reread it. Each time you'll find something else that you end up loving or that you missed the first time around, or appreciate that much more the numerous times that you reread it. That's the way I feel. I could be wrong about that, but that's kind of the overall feel. Now, we are going to be going into some major spoilers here. So if you don't know the story and you haven't seen the movies, don't continue. Or if you don't care, then continue. Because I need to talk about, obviously, Gandalf coming back. As he technically died at the end of Fellowship of the Ring, we get a little bit more as he explains that he fought the Balrog, and essentially that battle lasted forever, and eventually they both died. But he does get resurrected as Gandalf the White. One of my favorite parts here as well is when Gandalf goes up to Saruman and they have a conversation. And Saruman is about to leave. And Gandalf tells him, we don't really ever see Gandalf using that much magic, but he basically orders Saruman to continue talking to him because he's not done. And that was great. And because it shows that Gandalf is now the superior within the ranks. Before he was Gandalf the Grey, Gandalf the White makes him above Saruman. And that was just some really nice storytelling there that I really enjoyed. Obviously, the Battle of Helm's Deep is pretty interesting. I'm glad that we did get a little bit about of the battle here. It was explained a little bit more into detail that I don't remember it being that long in the original. I felt like Helm's Deep, I mean, it's not very long, but you do get a little bit more than I expected from what I remembered anyway. We do get a little bit more about the societies of men, which I very much enjoyed. I do like the Riders of Rohan. I do like Eomer. I find him interesting. And then in the second part where Faramir is introduced, Boromir's brother, he's okay. I do really like, for some reason, I really enjoy the way that it explained that the company that is with Faramir are so well at hiding themselves, and Frodo is never really able to figure out how many of them are there, when they're disappearing. I really like the way that Tolkien was able to describe that. And obviously Gollum. I mean, we got a hint of Gollum in The Hobbit. We didn't really get him in The Fellowship. And now in Two Towers, he is taking a main character slot here, and such an interesting individual character where he is a perfect blend of a tragic character that had a rough life, but pure evil at the same time. And so you feel bad for him in certain instances, that even a character that is as evil and conniving and vicious as Smeagol/Gollum, you still feel bad for him. That you still don't necessarily want the worst for him, because he is still a living being. And I think that Tolkien did the perfect blend of that within this. So that's, even though I don't necessarily enjoy the Sam and Frodo part of the story as much, having Gollum infused into that really added. And Shelob. I mean, I hate spiders. I absolutely detest spiders, but it's interesting, mainly because I think that they mention Ungoliath for like a second, and I just think that the idea of these gigantic spiders that are like so powerful really intrigues me. I mean, it's because I think that Tolkien is very subtle with the use of magic, where it's so rampant really in this world, but the details and how you are seeing it isn't as apparent. It's kind of in the background, but it's really hard to describe, but it's I really like Middle Earth magic and how powerful certain things are without Tolkien ever really explaining or showing us the power of them other than in subtle ways. Just something I really enjoyed. Also, this has nothing to do with the story, but this is the ones that I have here that are Alan Lee, once again, just incredible art. And this one here has a few pictures every so, like, I feel like every chapter we get a few pictures and they're just beautiful. I mean, just the guy understands Middle Earth so well. I always wondered what, like, for some reason, it just seems as though when you're reading these stories, that's really what the world looks like. It's perfect. It's just excellent. So there you go. That's my review for The Two Towers. I really enjoyed this. I cannot wait to finally finish Return of the King and see how I feel finally finishing that story, because I know that as much as I love the movies and I've watched them, I know that Return of the King does stray a little bit away from what actually happens within the novel by Tolkien. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to be. Let me know in the comments below what you think about The Two Towers. And thank you all for watching. You have been bearded in. Beardage.